Welcome, everybody. We are back with Bats and Stats, presented to you by ScoutTheStatline.com. We got an exciting night tonight. Me, Brian, as always, my compadre above me, to the side of me. I don't know how the picture is going to look when you guys see this, but my friend Ross Jensen. And we are introducing another member that we have kind of compiled a bunch of stuff together with Mr. Chris Knock. Chris,
What's
how are we
happening?
doing tonight, sir?
I am excellent. I'm excited to be sitting here chatting with you guys.
Chris Knock is a writer with the Dynasty Guru. He does
Right.
some fantastic work.
Yeah.
He's constantly adding into, especially all the roundtable pieces that are going out there. Chris is always involved in that. So we're happy to have you on here because you're a great voice and all the Slack commentary. You're on the Discord too, right?
I'm on the Discord. That is
Yeah,
an active bunch
yeah.
Yeah.
that sometimes it's like you blink and you miss a bunch.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time to me too. And we just really appreciate you and what you bring to the table. And so we're glad to have you on here to hear your opinions and kind of juxtapose them with some of our thoughts and some of my
Yeah,
strong opinions that I'm always throwing out there. So
I
glad
love
to
it.
have you,
Yeah.
man.
Give us a little something, man. Any kind of background that you got on yourself, or some tidbits. Any kind of. I asked Taylor this last week. Any riveting fantasy baseball stories?
Oh, riveting to me maybe, but there's not enough beer to make it riveting to other people. Um, I do have a cool Boise story that I think Ross might like.
Boise,
I
Idaho.
represent.
Ripping it. Yeah.
So back when I was in school, I was doing some internships in Seattle, driving back with a buddy. I grew up in Iowa or Illinois, Iowa area, and we stopped in Boise on the way home. 11 p.m., middle of the week. I don't know what day, and everything's closed. 11 p.m. Nothing's open. So we go spinning downtown trying to find a bar. We're like, all right, probably downtown. This is early iPhone days years ago. Downtown's just crickets. Nothing is happening. What the heck? Where does anyone go to get a beer at 11 o'clock? We pull up to a stoplight and someone in a giant, like straight out of Chuck E. Cheese chicken suit is just dancing on the corner all by himself. And he comes up to the window. You guys want to party? No, thank you. And we slammed it and head back to the hotel to get a
Wow.
good night rest.
That is bizarre. I
It's
mean, what are
crazy.
you
And
talking
I will,
about like 15 years ago, 10 years ago?
uh, um, 2008, 15. Was that you?
Wow. No, I came
Yeah.
here. I moved here in 2011,
Okay.
but that's really interesting because downtown Boise is usually pretty popping.
It was
Huh.
not it was popping for the chicken guy. It was the weirdest thing. I will never forget it. That's what I always think of when I think of Boise is empty streets and a chicken costume.
Well, that's it's interesting. So I can't speak for what was going on in 2008 downtown Boise, guy in a chicken suit. Uh, but I will say that I know that Boise was rocked pretty hard by the financial crisis back then. That would have been around that time when it was getting kicked off or kind of
Eh,
hitting its full steam, maybe. And maybe that's why you weren't seeing anyone downtown.
Maybe, I don't
Everybody
know, but
broke. I don't know.
yeah. It was so yeah, so I apologize. That's not a fantasy baseball story, but
No, no, it was a perfect story, is what it was.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Chicken story. Oh, man.
chickens.
So, Chris, I got some questions for you, if you don't mind, before
Yeah,
we move on. And
whatever.
I don't want to take up too much time because we still got to get to our beers, and that's really important. But what would you say your specialty is on the writing side, and how did you get involved?
Oh man. Okay. So that's a good question. Thank you. My specialty. My
Yeah.
specialty is I I am not a writer at heart. I am not, in just general, I'm not a literary genius by any means. Reading Ryan's work, it's really something. Him and I got hired or whatever, let in to the Dynasty Guru about the same time, and his writing is like 99 times better than mine at least. And so I don't bring a strong writing style, but I think I have a nice little combination of I think uh analytics plus a little bit of scouting, and by scouting that's my own scouting, not any scout school history or anything like that, but just passion. So I am addicted, probably, if you ask my wife, to dynasty and fantasy baseball. So I'm always reading, always surfing, scrolling, the perpetual scroll, she tells it, when I'm looking at everything. So sure you guys have heard that one. So yeah, I recently was started doing some of the 500 ranks on Dynasty Guru, and put together my first official list as a solo ranker, which was a pretty cool thing with the history of Dynasty Guru as on its own. So I think that's kind of be my niche there, to continue doing that, and just helping, satisfy some of that who's better than who on a very basic level.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, I think you're doing terrific stuff, man. With that, let's get right into our probably going to be our most popular segment. Let's be honest, the beer of the pod.
There we go.
Beer of the pod. And Chris, I'd like you to go first, good sir. What kind of beer you got for us?
So I didn't go local, although I alluded to me growing up near or on the border of Iowa. This is, where's my camera? Big Grove Brewery out of Iowa City. My in-laws live there. They were nice enough to bring me up a 12-pack of the Arms Race American Pale Ale.
Nice.
So it is I got a head start and already cracked her open.
Look at that. It looks great.
Ready to go.
I'm parched.
Oh yeah.
He's an hour and ahead of us, and we get going a little late. So this is getting to be a little late for Chris. So I don't blame you at all.
I've got another one. I've got another one next to me, so I'm here for the long run.
There it is. That's what I was going to ask you. Can you give us a little taster right there? What do you got? What's it taste like?
I think of American Pale Ales, I think of Bell's Two Hearted, and I think Bell's better look out. This thing is it's a solid beer. I think Nate Kading, for those of you who are the football fans, he might have a hand in this brewery. I think Nate Kading, he was a glorious kicker for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I think the Chargers for a number of years. I'm actually not a big fan of the Hawkeyes.
Okay.
Whatever.
Well, with that, Ross, what do you got, good sir?
All right. So I've got a Cryo Hops beer. This one's called Stash Bandicoot.
That's a great name.
If you like video games, Bandicoot, play on that, I guess.
We did not plan that name either with this glorious mustache that I got going on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a second too. That's a curiosity. So this is a hazy imperial IPA. It's a little bit stronger, 8%. I'll give it a pour for you and let you know my thoughts. I'm doing a lot of the IPAs on the show, but we've switched it up a couple times, but now I'm going back to it. The hazies, they're popular. I like them. And we'll see if this one lives up to the others. Okay. Too much head.
I was going to say, come on here.
It must be his first time.
We might have to have Brian talk for a bit.
Can you believe it? All right. That's good. I like it. It's I don't know if there's anything that's out of the ordinary with it, but it's a very good, solid, hazy IPA. Fits the profile to a T.
Great work, boy. I randomly went to a new gas station tonight, and I didn't even look. Like I just seen different colorations on a box, grabbed it, and here we are. Tonight, I have Bridger, um, Bridger Lee Metcalf, and this is out of Three Forks, Montana. I don't think I've ever had a beer from this place, but this is a wilderness pale ale. Little scope on the side here. It says, "Paying homage to our favorite wilderness area. This wild pale ale knows how to get dirty. The Lee Metcalf is the perfect companion for your next journey." And apparently it's got a great aroma.
I love that name, and the can is pretty minimalistic, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for a good looking can or packaging. Yeah. You know, they know me.
Yeah.
That old adage, you can't judge a book by its cover. That's some bullshit. Man, I'm terrible too, Ross. I'll have to drink a can for a second. I'll give you guys a taster.
That's why I pre-poured.
Looks better now.
There you go.
Really, really hoppy. If you guys have ever had Bent Nail is one of my favorite beers. This tastes very similar. It's a good beer. Very good beer.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now we got to hear about the mustache. You tried to avoid that one.
Yeah, I did try to avoid it.
Just go on Magnum PI.
Yeah. I took some shade on it for this weekend quite a bit. It was graduation weekend in Montana, and I was having to hang out with 18-year-olds with this mustache, so I kind of felt a little beneath myself, I suppose. But I think it's here to stay. I cut my hair, and I was really upset about that. I had pretty long hair there for a little bit, and I miss it, so I'm growing the mustache instead now. It's a midlife crisis. It's a whole thing.
I think it's pretty cool, dude. You are gonna have to, smuggle some Coors out of the Rockies here, smoking the Bandit style, because that thing is badass.
It's awesome.
And
badass.
Just a little bit of a spoiler: we have some fantastic mustaches that we're gonna highlight tonight. And this wasn't planned. None of this was planned. Like Ross with the Stash Bandicoot beer, and then another little spoiler about the pod lineup tonight is I do a brief outline of what we want to kind of go through, and Chris got a hold of it and just went wild on it. And so he chose 3 pitchers that are really awesome. He wants Ross to talk about his favorite prospect, and we're going to dive into some rookie league stuff. And then Ross, last week, Ross had picked 3 other players that he just wanted to highlight. The weird thing about this whole shebang that we're going to be going through, all these guys have got great mustaches.
What are the odds?
It wasn't planned. But anyways, let's get to it, boys. So we got our beer out of the way. Next thing that I think a lot of people want to talk about this. I think people are really interested. It's going to be a little scandalous because I know people, really want to dig their heels in, get into the trenches and say, this is the number 1 overall prospect. I like this guy more than the other guy. But the gentleman that we are talking to, Ross Jensen, is steadfast, and he is really, really excited. He is beating the drum for Jackson Holliday. And we got to know, Ross, is Jackson Holliday the next coming?
So you're right. I've made the proclamation. I'm standing by it 100%. Jackson Holliday is the number 1 prospect. And I'm going to take this a step further. It's not very close. He is way far above. And I know Chris is probably going to have some words to say with me about that. And there's plenty of others that do too, and that's okay. This is my perspective on it. And for some reason, I get to say whatever I want. So I go ahead and do it. I think Jackson Holliday has the potential, and I said this on Twitter earlier today, to be a top 10 hitter in the league. And you do not get those guys that often. Those guys don't come around every day. Sometimes they develop a little bit later and they pop in there, but there are guys that you know are going to be top 10 guys, and this is one of them. And I mean, you don't even have to look that far to find it out because his numbers are insane. Video game numbers on the season. He's batting .394. He's walking more than he's struck out. Both levels. I mean, incredibly consistent across levels after being promoted. He had a slow start in high A. I put quotes around it because he was only hitting like 330 for a little while, you know. And he's just turned it on. He's figured that level out already. He's hitting 390 now at that level. 395, I think. I think he's actually hitting higher than he was at single A now. He's slugging more than he was. The only thing that's down a little bit is his OBP, but he's still walking more than he struck out. This guy's incredible. And you can see it in the data underpinning Scout the Statline too. You know, his Z-score is, I think it's about 60% higher than the next closest player. That's significant. He is significantly more valuable. That's what they're saying. He's projected to be significantly more valuable. So I'm 100% in on him. I know what he lacks compared to like an Elly De La Cruz is proximity. But there's risk with Elly De La Cruz that I don't think that there is with Jackson Holiday. I think that there's very, very little, and same thing with like Jackson Chorio even. Very, very little risk with Holiday. There's almost no way that I see him not succeeding. He could fail to reach his potential, his ceiling, but there's no way that he's not at least above average, in my opinion. And I think he's going to be a top 10 hitter. So I'm all in. I think if you identify a guy like that you're pretty certain is going to be a top 10 guy, you put everything you can to get him before he has top 10 prices, you know? And that's what I've been saying. And I've been having some discussions. People are like, his value is already too high. I can't afford it. And there are going to be owners out there that have this guy that won't trade him, or the price is going to be so high already that you're going to have to trade a top 10 guy. And I'm not saying you do that, but I'm saying if there is even a high price that's not terribly unreasonable, then you go for it. You give everything you can to make it happen because Jackson Holiday is a stud.
Is this 100% statistically based, or does genes play into this? What's your thoughts on that? I mean,
if
obviously,
this was all based on genes, then it would be Drew Jones that would be number one. He's got the genes. Jackson
I'm
Holiday's
asking your
got the
opinion.
Performance. I'm sorry, I'm a little peppery tonight, so I'm coming at you. How dare you?
I'm asking your opinion. For you, is it 100% statistically based, or does the genes play in?
100% in the numbers. It's 100% in the numbers. You look at the numbers, you can see it. And I was saying this over the off season. I don't think anyone's disputing it now. I was saying, why wouldn't you take Holiday over a Drew Jones when you know what Holiday can do? We already saw what he could do last season. And there were still people saying, but Drew Jones has got this great ceiling potential, and that's fantastic, but we didn't actually see anything from him. We knew what Holiday could do. And what we saw that he could do was pretty remarkable. So I was all in, like, at that time, before me saying he was number one. And now I'm saying we've seen enough. He's number one. He had number one potential before. He is number one now. That's just the way I view it. I've got a very strong opinion on it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and I like it. Chris, what do you got on it? What do you think about Jackson Holiday? Or maybe not even Jackson Holiday. Maybe you have a different view on who number one is.
Well, and I think I'm never a straightforward answer, unfortunately.
And why I ask the questions and all that.
Yeah, I don't know if he is my number one. I have wrestled with that idea. I haven't put out any official lists, but I've been wrestling with that idea for a while. I remember actually, Ross, you saying that in the off season. I don't know if it was in our Slack chats for our ranking season or when it was, but I do remember you saying we've seen the stats, we've seen him produce. Relatively small sample after last year, but I remember you beating that drum in the off season for sure. I refer to Jackson Holiday as a bag of sixes. Sometimes you talk about those bags of fives in scouting grades, and I see Jackson Holiday as like 60s across the board, which is sexy from a prospect perspective. And that floor is probably 45s across the board. When you talk about that top
45s, it's got to be 50, 55 at least.
You think so? I mean, the approach is huge, and I will give you. I mean, when you're talking an OBP of like 500, I kind of chuckled when you said it's dropped when he went to high A, and I think it's still above 500.
From 520 to 500.
Yeah, slacker. When I think about the top prospect, he's got a great floor, and he could be. I think I would like to comp him. I think his ceiling in my eyes is Frankie Lindor's prime years of those 20. What was that? 18 or 19 or somewhere in there. That 30 and 20 type. That's great. That is awesome, and that is a top 10 bat for sure. But I don't know. I'm just not yet ready to put that on him. Will the steals be there? And that's where I start leaning towards Ellie. But Ellie's got huge K risk, but he's made it play with 30% rates all through his minor leagues. You look at it year after year, 30% K rate, 30% K rate. He does it somehow. And I'm not out on Churio. So I'm like in this.
There's some big bats. There's some big bats in the minors that are really, really good looking right now. I am also on your side, Chris. I will not put my stamp on one player saying he's a future Hall of Famer in the minor leagues. I won't do it. I know Ross will, but he's stubborn, bullheaded, and I love listening to him though.
I got one last part though. So I think it depends. It ultimately comes down to your league and the depth of the league. I actually traded Ellie for Holiday a few weeks ago, and other pieces in a 30-man because I wanted Holiday as opposed to Ellie in a 30-man. In a 15 and a 12, I'd probably lean upside. So when I finally put my ranks out, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, I'll probably have Ellie up because I do that with a 15-man lens. So I'd probably put Ellie above Holiday in that one.
I think that brings up a really, really good. I'm going to kind of jump off the rails here for just a second. What is the difference in your eyes in a 30-man league compared to a 15-man league? We're judging players, right? And we want to have the best players available. What would you have different in a 15 to a 30?
In a 15, I would almost exclusively target upside. Again, league specifics do matter. But in a 30, I would probably lean to some floor in my prospects, but I would still have in that 30-man league. It's a team I took over. It was an orphan team, so I've been shuffling a lot of chairs. I wanted a safe bat, so Holiday was my target for sure. And then those 30-man leagues, I'm definitely just aiming for a little bit of more floor focused as opposed to just pure upside. I do have a couple upside. I got Elijah Green on the roster too, so you got to sprinkle some upside.
Yep. And I'd throw that same question off you, Ross, because I want the viewers to have a little bit different perspective on league sizes. Is it the free agency base? There's no free agents left in the 30 man, right? I mean, everybody's taken. So that's kind of where Chris is going with this.
Yeah.
Is you want a higher floor because you can't fail in a 30 man because there's nobody else to go get when in a 15. Yeah, you can go get Kyle Farmer off the bench.
I think in general, you're right. The replacement level is a lot lower, and you're looking for more depth than you are for biggest talents that you can. That's the general sort of thought on it. I don't know that it particularly changes my evaluation on players so much. The thing I see is, okay, so I feel like I've heard this a lot where people have a perspective that somebody that is polished and has a good approach, like a Jackson Holiday, comes with a lower ceiling. And that's where I'm not necessarily aligned with, I think, a lot of analysts that are out there. Is I kind of see that guy's ceiling potential is still just as enormous, if not more, because he's got the ability to tap into it a little bit easier in my mind than somebody like an Elly De La Cruz, where there is enormous upside. Do not get me wrong. I mean, there's 40-40 potential in that profile, but there's enormous risk. And the risk to me doesn't mean that he's somebody that you write off because of it, but it means that the ability for him to tap into that 40-40 potential is quite a bit lower, because he's got to be able to consistently hit at the major league level to stay there, to continue playing. And if he's not, then, if the strikeouts start piling up and he's not making that same consistent contact and hitting the ball 465 feet like he's been doing, he's incredible at this level. But we've seen it before too. We've seen it before with incredible talents that had messy plate discipline. I'm not saying his is messy, but it's not great. And they've failed to reach that potential at the major league level. So that's all I'm getting at between that comparison. And 10 out of 10 times I take a Jackson Holiday sort of profile in that scenario. That's just my take on it. Mm-hmm. I'm not mad at anyone else for going the other direction, of course. Like, we all have different ways of evaluating players. And I heard this on Twitter. I got a message, a private message from somebody pretty big in the industry. And they were like, how is it that you see that there cannot be another tier? And it's like, dude, that's just the way that I've looked at baseball, and my experience and the way that I evaluate players. That's what it's telling me. I'm seeing enough evidence that I don't think it's particularly close. But if you do, that's okay. That's cool. Like, I totally am all right with that. I'm not trying to knock anyone else by saying that I feel like it's Holiday and then everybody else, And Jackson Chourio, I'm still on too. I'm not off of him.
Yeah, and I wasn't.
Jordan Walker.
What do I?
You guys are missing. Like, there's two more.
Walker. I'm sorry. Yeah, Walker. I think I do still believe in him. I'll be honest. He was someone who
I do too.
Early on, that hit tool was shining, and I really, he's trying to change his launch angle, changing his approach at the bat with his swings, and it's going to be another process. That's the Trout example shines on. I'm not saying he's going to be Trout, but it's a beautiful game and it takes a lot of time.
So here's another interesting.
Go ahead.
So here's another interesting thing about Jordan Walker in particular, because I still think he's an enormous talent. I would 10 out of 10 times, and much lower risk than Elly De La Cruz in my mind. But 10 out of 10 times, I'm still taking Jackson Holiday between the two. In fact, I've been on Twitter saying I just had a trade go down in a league. I traded Jackson Chourio and Jordan Walker to get Jackson Holiday. That was the price I had to pay. And I love those two guys that I traded. That's just the upside I see with Holiday, and I can't pass up that opportunity, or else I'm gonna kick myself later for it, you know. So anyway, that's my thought on those prospects. But I think Walker is going to be really good still. It's just going to take a little bit of time for him to iron out what he's going through right now. He'll be back up, and he'll be mashing before too long.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. I did want to bring up one day. So we did a player evaluation on Ellie. I brought up a comp with Ross was completely in love with the Twins outfielder. He was the number 1 overall prospect. What was his name?
Delmon Young.
Delmon Young. Thank you. It's eerily similar. Like
Really?
eerily similar how close those guys are. That's just a word of caution. I don't believe that Ellie is Delmon Young, but
Did Delmon have some off the field issues? I'll be honest, I don't remember, but I thought there may have been. I'm not trying to sully anyone's name by any means, but it's just.
Yeah, I think he did have some issues. But let me quote something to you, and I want to see if this leaves an impression, because Brian quoted this to me and it left an impression. This was Delmon Young in.
it was spot on. It was like.
It was great. This was in 2006. No, 2005. Delmon Young was 19 years old. He was playing between AA and AAA. That's impressive in itself, right? At 19, he batted .315 with a .354 OBP and a .527 slugging percentage. 26 home runs on the year. And 32 stolen bases. Those are enormous numbers, right?
Yeah.
And you look at that profile and you're like, that's the number 1 prospect.
Yep.
Right? And he was the number 1 prospect. Right. So there's nothing abnormal about that. But what he didn't have in order is plate discipline. His plate discipline was a mess. And while he was fine as a major leaguer, he never reached that potential. And I think that's because of that plate discipline. People are like, well, I don't have to throw anything near the strike zone. Delmon Young's going to swing at it. I can't say that Ellie De La Cruz is going to have the same issues. I can't.
No.
But he has a similar setup profile, you know. Yeah. So there's some things to work on, and I hope the Reds are able to help him work through that, because I'm a Reds fan. I want him to succeed. I want him to be really good. So
you're a Reds fan?
I am. Yeah. If you can believe it.
Today I learned.
He keeps that very quiet.
All right, sorry.
He's rarely wrong, but he's been wrong his whole life.
I'm not super proud of it, you know. Now, the organization, I just have not been aligned with a lot of the decisions that they made, but they got a great farm right now, and so I'm feeling a little more optimistic. I'm coming out of my shell a little bit.
So you're getting like Will Benson vibes here or something. Is that your concern? I mean, ultimately, the guy's Benson's a tool shed, right? And
I mean, we didn't eval of him over the offseason. It was the same thing. We said highlighted the same risks, you know, and I'm not surprised that he is, what was he, 1 for 24 or something like that? We looked up that.
He got another game the other day and he's already been demoted.
Oh, that's a shame.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Okay. Well, there's Jackson Holiday and Ellie De La Cruz and Jackson Churio right there for you guys. But we're going to jump into the next segment here. And I can't say that many people that we would invite onto the pod would bring up pitchers. And I'm excited for it. Because nobody ever wants to talk about pitchers, right? Yeah, it is. It's scary. You don't want to put your neck out there because the injuries are there. The growing pains of a pitcher are nasty. But lo and behold, Mr. Chris here wanted to do pitchers. And he brought up some fun ones, some good ones, and we're going to run through them. So we're going to do 3 tonight. And we're going to start with Mr. Nick Frasso. And Mr. Nick Frasso is with the Double-A affiliate with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's 24 years old. He was drafted in 2020 by the Toronto Blue Jays in round 4, 106 at Loyola Marymount. Everything looks really good in the minors so far for Frasso. Let me run through it here real quick. Let me get you situated if I can. There it is. Okay. So in 2021, obviously, he was in the single A affiliate, and he only got 5 innings pitched that year. I would guess something happened there, but I don't quite know what it was. But in 2022, he had 54 innings pitched in 3 different affiliates, single A, 2 A pluses, and then a double A. There was a trade in between there from the Blue Jays to the Dodgers, and everything was pretty sparkling until he got to double A. The whole season in 54 innings, his ERA was 1.83. He struck out 76 batters. His whip was 0.93, which is disgusting. His K per 9 was rather, oh no, it was great. It was at 12.67. I apologize. I'm misspeaking on this guy. Guys, jump into this 6'5", 200-pounder from the Dodgers.
Ross, you go first, man.
Well, I've had a lot of people reach out to me pointing out the success of Nick Frasso, and you're right, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, I don't know if there's much to say. His career minor league ERA is 1.47. And he's striking out almost 13 batters per 9. It's pretty insane. The Dodgers are just uber talented at the position, but at developing pitchers as well. They've been incredible.
And this dude throws gas. I mean, that's the crazy thing is he's throwing triple digits. He's not but he's locating it. I mean, you talked about his whip being substantial. He's not overachieving with this ERA. His fielding independent is spot on and agrees with it. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting. It really is that the Dodgers are able to acquire, develop, and in one of my shallower leagues, I grabbed him earlier this year, and I don't know why, because it's a waste of a spot because he's not going to get called up for like 2 years, And
if there's one risk, it's that he's 24, right? He's not going to be up till he's 26.
I don't know his. He's Rule 5 at the end of the year. Actually, I take that back. He's Rule 5 at the end of this year. Grab him. He'll probably be up at some point this year. They'll probably throw him into the fire in September, I bet.
I'm guessing he plays a lot out of the bullpen. He's only got 85.2 innings pitched. So I would guess early on he was certainly in the bullpen. 2022 looks like he was in the bullpen. 23 he might be starting.
He has been starting this year. I do know that much.
Yeah, he's started 6 games this year.
But yeah, that's obviously a way to ease them in, as we've seen with the Brewers and whatnot. Well, even the Dodgers. Hell, he's, I don't know, he's one to hold. I think now that I realize that he's Rule 5 eligible, I would be surprised if the Dodgers would not. I guess I don't know if he's on the 40-man. No, he's obviously not. If he's Rule 5 eligible, part of my internal dialogue there.
So, here's my thoughts. Even I said just a second ago before you mentioned the Rule 5 eligibility that he might not be up for a couple of years. That puts him at 26 or whatever. Jacob DeGrom, he came in at 26. And this is why I put a lot less emphasis on age when it comes to pitchers, because it's not as predictable. you have a guy that comes in at 26 and dominates, like a DeGrom might not be a top 10 prospect, but is going to be the best pitcher in the league. Frasso's got the capabilities and he's got the physique. I don't know why this guy's not
he's
a top 30 guy everywhere, at least already.
Well, I think Mason Miller is kind of, to me, like almost seems to be this, I don't know the term I'm looking for, but he seems to be like the canary in the coal mine almost of these relatively unheralded arms that scouting lists, prospect lists, whatever, aren't really grabbing a hold of. But, Frasso, a couple other names we're going to talk about here are guys that are starting to be recognized, I think, as more talented than rankings have previously given them credit for. Mm-hmm. And it kind of feels like this shift almost, and like, oh wow, look, I can get this unheralded guy before everyone else. You talk about paying the Jackson Holiday prices, buying them now because it's only going to go up. I think some of these arms, these not big arms, trying to think of the opposite. But there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. Well, if you get these proximity types that are Rule 5 eligible in Double-A dominating, this is a pitching prospect that could just.
Yeah, and we have our draft in me and Brian's league is pretty deep. And by the time you get to those bottom rounds, you could get a guy like a Nick Frasso. Mm-hmm. Probably not this year. Is he owned? I don't think he's even owned. But by the time,
I don't think so.
Well, and you have to get players in the draft in our league. So like we got to stipulate he didn't get drafted last year. This year he'll get drafted. He probably will go early enough. But last year you could have got that guy in like the eighth round. Why wouldn't you nab a guy like that? That's my play. And I guess I'm giving up too much my strategy. Everybody's on my strategy now, but I'm going to land these guys that are a little unheralded, but they're insane, like a Frasso in later rounds, rather than trying to pick up one of the big names in the early rounds, because it's so unpredictable with a lot of these guys. Mm-hmm. They break, and you don't know who's going to break. I don't care how many people say that you can tell, because you can't. Nobody knows. There's something to say for like arm slots and the way people are throwing. There's probably some predictability in there, maybe. I know I can't predict it, so
this is going to be a terrible example because he's been hurt for the past 2 years, 3 years. But yeah, Chris Sale. Yeah, they said it for 6 years. His arm's going to explode. It took it 6 freaking years for it to finally explode. You know what I mean?
Or on the flip, Espino, who didn't, who has that pitcher's frame, et cetera, and has been out. That's who I thought you were going to say for the last 2 years hasn't pitched. It's kind of the flip side. Someone who they didn't think would break, and he breaks.
Yep. Yeah, you just don't know. That's the way it is with injuries in general in baseball.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's worse with pitchers.
I have a decent comp for Nick Frasso, and he's still working through it, but he's a late round guy that nobody's really talking about, but now he's kind of showing it this year. Bailey Ober.
Okay.
And I think that's a really good one for Frasso because he could have that same learning curve where he gets the call up for a full year, and then the Dodgers are loaded, so they just don't have enough room for him. He's going to get sent down, get called, be in that taxi squad sort of deal. It's going to take patience, and I like Ober, and I think Frasso is going to be the same way. I think they're both going to be really good.
Does Ober throw with that same kind of velocity?
No, he's not a huge. Yeah, yeah, Ober's huge.
Cow. I still baseball amazes me every day. I look this stuff up. I'm like, let me look up Bailey Ober. 6'9". Jeez.
He doesn't have the gas that Frasso does, but it just kind of a link there, I guess, for me.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, Nick Frasso.
Nick Frasso. I like it.
Is he a go get him?
No. Well, it depends on your league. Once again, in our league, yeah, he's going to be a draft pick. Go get him. In other leagues, if he's sitting out on the waiver wire, absolutely go snag him.
He's probably a close one. He's at least a 150, top 150 guy in my eyes. Easy.
Oh, yeah.
Easy.
He's got to be higher than that. He's got to be higher than
that. Let's be honest with the Gavin Stone struggles. Maybe that's one of those things that Gavin Stone can be sitting down in the minors for a while Frasso figures it out in the big leagues.
I mean, it's a good point, and I don't know. It's hard to roster.
It's going to be frustrating.
But he's a good one, I think, to obtain because, well, I don't know. The owners of Frasso are probably more on Frasso than the guys than most average owners, right? Because they're probably a little more statistically or analytically oriented, and so they're probably going to be like, no, this guy's got a 1.2 ERA for his career. I'm holding on to him. But if he's not owned, or if the owner that has him is not like that, this guy's probably an interesting pickup, I think.
Let's jump into our next pitcher. We got another pitcher on here, another big guy. His name is Mike Bastille, and he is with the AA affiliate with the New York Mets. He is 6'5", 225 pounds. He is 23 years old. He was drafted in 21 in round 8, picked 232 out of College, Virginia. I'm just going to hit all of the stats, and then we can kind of break it down. But his minors career so far, 297 ERA in 115 innings pitched. He has 141 strikeouts. His whip is, good God, 0.92. 0.92 whip in 115 innings pitched. His K per 9 is 11. Wow. Guys, go ahead.
Oh, you're turning it over. I thought you were talking to the audience there. Okay. This guy was, I'll be brief and I'll turn it back over to you, Chris, here in a second. But this guy was popping real early on our single season leaderboard. So for the members out there and for everybody else that's not a member, become a member, and then you can have access to the single season leaderboard too. But he was really popping on that leaderboard, showing up because he had a tremendous start to the season. Incredible. And you're right, he's got some incredible stats on the year too. So this guy's way underrated. I don't think he's probably owned in many leagues even. I haven't looked up the Fantrax stats on him, but I bet you it's under 10%.
I was going to say 9. I was going to say 9, and I will find it for you guys right now.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I would guess higher. I'm going to guess 14. I've seen his name pop up on the Bird app a lot more often, although maybe it's just the people I follow. He was an off-season target of mine in another 30-man league that I was in. So you can see he's just, for me, you talked about his whip again as being ridiculously low, showing that he's able to command his stuff. He's got a freaking starter's arsenal, with however many 3 or 4 pitches, I forget. My biggest concern, and maybe it's just a generic concern, but he's a Met, and so we talk about injuries. Not trying to throw shade there, but I don't know. It just there's if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. But he's been healthy. I don't know of any issues he's had with health.
He's rostered in 18% of leagues, so you're 18. Right. He's a little higher than I anticipated.
I actually want to pop in there for just a second. Last week he was only 11%, so it's 7% in a week.
Yeah, see,
so people are getting smart.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh yeah, you're right. 7.1%. Yeah, that's fascinating.
That is.
Yeah.
We're late. We're not late. We're not late very often. We're late.
Well, the leaderboard wasn't late. The leaderboard was on this guy from the beginning of the season. We're late. We're human. We're fallible. The machine is infallible.
I've been AI created since the start. You know I'm not real.
But you're real late this time.
What's Bastille's college numbers look like? Can you pull that up for me real quick?
I sure can. He was a UV alum.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like his freshman year he got knocked around a little bit. His sophomore year was much better from an ERA perspective. They're not that great. Just overall, I'll give you his career. His career college numbers are 4.74 ERA, 7.6 Ks per nine. That's not that much. Almost a 1.5 WHIP for his career. It's fascinating looking at guys like this. A long-term goal at Scout the Statline is to get into college translations. And I want this pretty badly because I think this would be so useful.
Unique.
I've dabbled more into college data, and I think it's important and valuable, but it's hard to predict. It really is hard to predict. So, I mean, I'd love to see it just to know what those results are. But I don't know how well it's going to work, because you look at a guy like this, how can you predict that this guy is going to end up being a dominant pitcher in the minor leagues? And we don't know if he's going to be a dominant pitcher in the major leagues yet, but
he's insane in the minors.
To go from that college career to this professional career is interesting. And we see this quite a bit with guys. And sometimes their profiles are totally different.
Mike Vassell
is interesting.
That guy's awesome. What do you think? Is he a go get him? He's a draft pick if he's unowned, and if you can get him from an owner that is unaware. Yeah, Mike Vassell, go get him, right? He's got to be
on your radar at the very least. Big guy, clearly a performer. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to give a solid recommendation on that, but he's certainly interesting.
Those two whips that we just looked at are disgusting.
Yeah, he's another top 150 guy for me, easy. Yeah. And I'm using that as a very large realm, I guess, as a he's not a top 50. He might be pushing top 100, I think, with just how well he's doing so far this year. I just think he'll have the opportunities in the near future. It's not the loaded Cleveland or Dodgers or Tampa Bay pitching scenarios.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have him as a top 150 arm thereabouts. Top 150 prospect, I should clarify.
I like that. And that's a big deal. I like that a lot. Let's get into the next one. Let's get into the last picture that we got for tonight. And his name's going to be Drew Thorpe. Here's a mustache. Drew Thorpe is in high A affiliate with the New York Yankees. He is 6'4", 190 pounds. He's 22 years old. He was drafted in 2022, round 2, pick 61 overall out of Cal Poly. Overall stats. We only have 1 year. Ooh. Okay, yeah, we only have 1 year. In high A, 3.55 ERA in 38 innings pitched. His whip is 1.37. He has 45 strikeouts, and his K per 9 is 10.6. Another guy that I'm really glad that you brought up. I'm going to ask it in a little bit. I'd like to know what his college stats are, just to kind of compare here. But please tell me what you love about Drew Thorpe, Chris.
What do I love about Drew Thorpe? The guy looks like an ace. I mean, so he's got that demeanor up there. he's the thing about him is that he's not a lot of the Frasso is this high velocity guy. Thorpe is actually kind of the opposite. He's this command type. The with his big body, the projection of velocity gains are there, or at least the assumption that if this guy gets velocity, look out. He commands his fastball well. He commands. He's got the slider. He's got a changeup. I guess he's got a sweet mustache. I was unaware of that, but that's worth a couple points for style at least. And I mean the Yanks are the Yanks, and one thing I will also say that I do like to trade in my dynasty leagues is I'm always dealing, or not always, but often. And there's one thing that I know that is, if there's any players that get hype just with a blanket, it's those Yankees. So I'm always looking to consider that when looking at prospects as well.
Yeah,
certainly a good way to gain traction with, compiling those guys, and then once they get the explosion because of the Yankees hype, to get the most out of your buck. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
All right, check this out. I'm going to share this briefly.
You got something cool, don't you?
Check out that mustache.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Guy's awesome. Guy's awesome.
He looks just like you, Brian. You guys could be twins.
He's okay, I guess.
He's okay. Yeah, he's an interesting one. Out of the guys that we've talked about so far, he comes in with the lowest projections, but they're still not that bad. Actually, his xFIP is higher than his scaled ERA. Like they think that this guy's got a better profile for future production than how he's performing right now, anyway, compared to how that would translate to future success. And I think that's mostly because he's keeping the ball out of the air.
Yep.
He is a ground ball.
Yeah. So pretty interesting. Out of the other guys, Nick Frasso is number 7 on our pitching leaderboard. That's pretty high. Projects for a peak 3.07 xFIP. That's pretty good. Again, another guy that's keeping the ball in the ballpark, very low fly ball percentage. And then Mike Vassell is 3.52. He comes in at number 32 on the leaderboard, which is pretty excellent too. So some really good pitchers to keep your eyes open.
Yeah,
for sure.
Do your projections show K- walk or K rate projections?
Yep. Frasso projects for a peak of 22% for K percent minus walk percent. Vassell's at 19%. And Drew Thorpe is at 9%. So quite a bit lower.
He's not striking as many out right now. Yeah, I mean, with my that 20% is the generic threshold I hold in my head when I'm looking at major league guys. Yep. So
right around there.
Yeah.
And the projections on here are always they're average projections, right? This is the average translations of players. But that tends to be interpreted as conservative for most people, because there's a range of outcomes for every player, right? Like there's a band, and these guys are coming in at the average. Everybody comes in at the average. So we're never showing the ceiling potential of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
But people are expecting the ceiling potential when they think
at
peak, right? So I'd say those are excellent average outcomes. So I don't know.
An average outcome above a generic threshold is, that's something to hang your hat on.
Yeah, for sure.
So to everybody listening, I think we just gave you 3 guys that are completely under the radar, at least under 20% owned on Fantrax that you can go get. These are 3 guys that are, like, you can go get these guys, and they're really solid. Thorpe, you can probably sit on, and just keep an eye on, or go get him for low prices and see what happens. We're just bringing attention to these guys, and I love it. I love it, Chris. I really appreciate that you brought those 3 up.
I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess.
Well, you did great, man. Just absolutely fantastic.
And if anyone has any problems with these guys, they can reach Chris on Twitter.
But yeah, thanks for following, everybody. If you need to get a hold of me on Twitter, my @ is @BRIAN Brian 59044.
So if you guys want to connect, talk baseball, I'm all for it. You can find me on Twitter at Ross Jensen 12. I was the 12th one.
You're first in my heart, though. And if you want to find me on Twitter, I am at not CNock. I think I was drunk when I came up with that.
Great one. It's a great one, and he's a great follow. So yeah, go hit him up for sure.
Beautiful. Push that stop record button, bud.